But if we are going to change, it will be ideological. It will not be political. It will not be one or two people. It will not be after this election that all of a sudden you're going to have magic. I think there can be some improvements, and if they're moving in the right direction, things could improve. But ultimately, it's going to be up to you as individuals, especially those of you who are in a college or law school, to try to understand the importance of law, the rule of law, that all laws are based on the individuals and they're not based on group. I don't like collective punishments or collective benefits. We're important because we're an individual. And for that reason, a free society and the concerns about liberty bring people together, because the one thing you have to have if you want to live in a free society is tolerance. We understand pretty well in this country about tolerance on religion until just recently. I mean, we are less tolerant now because we have been badgered into blaming Islam rather than a few bad people in Islam. But if I have very conservative personal social values, but in order for me to promote what I'm talking about, I don't want to pass laws or become judgmental. I can have personal judgments. I can teach my children and other things on certain views. But if I want to be judgmental on how a person lives, what their lifestyle is, then I don't think I'm doing my job. But I don't want anybody else to be judgmental on the economic issues. Too often we've had these two factions. All right, I'm going to make you a better person on how you live, and I'm going to make sure that we have a free society and a fair society, and we'll spread the wealth around. But liberty is one unit, and we lost that. Liberty broke up into two pieces about 100 years or so ago. The founders never talked about economic liberty and personal liberty. Everybody had liberty. Now we even have speech in two groups, political speech and economic speech. You know, if you're in business, that's different than if you're just giving a talk. So it's all one. I think it is so wonderful because it brings people together. Ultimately, if we are more tolerant of each other, and the big rule is you can't use force. You can't use force to make another group act like you do as an individual or use the arm of government. And then there is more prosperity, and then there is a fairer distribution. The evidence is overwhelming that if you want the maximum amount of wealth in a country and the best distribution, it is through a free market and sound money economy where property rights are respected and understood, where contract law is very precise, and this is why we had Trump. And it's also the reason that we do not have to go through the devastating change that the Soviet system did and Russia did, because they didn't have our traditions. Our traditions, we've about forgotten about them, but if we want to look for them, at least we know what sound money used to be. We know what contracts and private property are like. We know what it could be like if you didn't have 47 agencies of government to go to ask them to start a business or use your property. So this is, we can do it, but the big question is will the young generation understand this, want it, think it's the right way, believe it's the American system, believe in the rule of law? And I believe, quite frankly, if we did that and just rejected this and let the bankruptcies roll and, let it go, do over a year or two, and we'd all go back to work. Can you imagine, let's say, there's some in here, probably are wealthier than others, but let's say tomorrow nobody has any wealth. But there are going to be jobs available. I mean, everybody can go out and work and do something. But the one thing you didn't have to do is ask permission for anything, and you didn't have to report anything. You got to keep everything you earned. I mean, I think it would be miraculous. What if we didn't put out $3.7 trillion with this mess we had this couple of years ago, which generated no growth? $3.7 trillion. What if we had just saved that money, not spend that, and just say, folks, we're in trouble. We need you to get your house in order. We need to get your debts paid down, pay your mortgages. So from now on, we've just gotten rid of the income tax. I think it would have cost less money really shouldn't have cost anything because we're just allowing the people to keep what was theirs. That's not a cost to government. But I think that the economy would be thriving and would have saved that $3.7 trillion. And we would have saved also the potential and the oncoming doom and gloom that's coming with this inflation that we have pumped into the system. That $3.7 trillion is still out there. People are scared and reluctant. They won't spend it. But the price inflation is coming back. We have the answers. It's a wonderful thing, but it's based on that one thing, individual liberty. And that liberty comes to us in a natural way. And the purpose of government should be limited to protecting that liberty. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. I'm going to say a few words and then get started.
Okay, very good.
Thank you all. What a stimulating discussion. And if you're like me, then you probably messed up the microphone. Oh, that was you. I'm taking the blame. I have so many questions, and I know I can see in many people's faces you have a lot of questions too. The Government Law Society, Mr. Franklin, some of the students have already prepared some questions that they want to pepper him with, Congressman Paul, with initially. If we have some time, we will ask for questions from the audience, but we want to give those students an opportunity who have asked for some questions to go ahead and ask them. So go right ahead.
Congressman Paul, our first question is, we are at the most diverse law school, one of the most diverse law schools in the country, and I was going to ask you, although we are at the most diverse law school in the country, we are on the campus of an HBCU, so what are your views about diversity in education? How do we sustain the legacy of HBCUs while recognizing that diversity?
Thank you. I do want to mention that Trevin invited me here, he got me here, and he also served as an intern in my office, so I appreciate that very much that he got this organized. But diversity, I think it's great. And I just mentioned how I think freedom handles diversity because there's nobody has to worry what their neighbors are doing, and that they're not going to steal from you, and they're not going to tell you what to do with your life, and they're not going to be overly judgmental. In schools, in a totally free society, I think it would be more diverse. I think people would be coming together. I think divisiveness comes when everybody's gathering around to get a piece of the pie, and the pie keeps shrinking. But it is true, though, in a free society, there would be a mixture of things. There would be diverse universities, and there would be other kind of universities. And I just think that sometimes legislative efforts to make something diverse is risky business, because then you're talking about, well, okay, we need quotas here and that kind of stuff. I think it has to be voluntary to be really work. So I just don't believe in the legislative approach, but strongly believe in the principle, and I'm also convinced that the best thing you can do to achieve diversity would be a free society.
Recently, we have seen the policies of President Obama come under attack from both sides of the aisle. What are some of the policies that he has passed, that Congress has passed, that you would consider, I guess, successful?
Always a tough question. Well, I guess it's hard to find any. But one thing I would say, one thing I would say is the problems he faced. I think I mentioned in the talk that one excuse is that it's always somebody else. I mean, he inherited it, and he did. It took a lot of years. So in many ways, his argument that this is not all his fault is absolutely right. But my argument would be that so far it hasn't changed a whole lot. But economic policy, I can't give him much on that, and certainly foreign policy. I had been hopeful that here I am talking about my disappointments rather than finding something. But and he was supposed to be better on civil liberties. He probably has encouraged, probably less aggressive punishment for people who decide to smoke marijuana. And also, I think he might be more sympathetic in our move toward, normalizing our trade and our efforts with Cuba. And it's not there yet, but I think he won't obstruct.